This video is going to cover the meaning of the word percent, as well as how we convert from a percent to a decimal and from a decimal to a percent. To start, the word percent means per 100, cent being associated with the number 100. So we can think of that as per 100, or we can think of it as parts out of 100. So thinking of that as a ratio, that percent symbol is associated with the fraction 1/100th. So if we want to take something like, let's take a simple one, like 50%. That means 50 out of 100. And there's a couple ways that this is helpful. We're going to look at turning a percent into a decimal, which is really helpful when doing calculations. And so if we think of taking 50 and dividing it by 100, that becomes 0.50. Similarly, let's take something like 23%. That means 23 out of 100. And when we divide by 100, taking that number 23 and dividing it by 100, that'll turn into 0.23. It can be helpful to say that decimal out loud too. That's 23 100ths when read as a decimal. Okay, so from there, we're going to talk about how we convert from a percent to a decimal and from a decimal to a percent. So we've done this a little bit above, but we're going to formalize that process. So to go from a percent to a decimal, the key is that we're going to drop the percent sign. This is going to be a number that no longer contains that percent symbol. So we drop the percent symbol, and we move the decimal point. And because we're dividing by 100, we're going to move the decimal point 2 places to the left. So let's try this out. Let's take something like 35%. 35%. Thinking of where's that decimal sitting? Well, we don't have to write it with 35, but it's sitting to the right of the 5. So moving it 1, 2, that turns into the number 0.35, or just 0.35. This method is really helpful when we want to convert something that's a little muckier, like 212%. Thinking of how that's written in a decimal, we'd have our decimal to the right of that 2 in 212, and we'd go 1, 2, and that becomes 2.12 when written in decimal form. Let's do one more. Let's take something like 1.35%. So a little bit more than 1%. And so thinking of moving that 2 places, you'll see that when we move 1 place to the left, there's not anything else there. So we're going to have to put a 0 directly after our decimal. And so we'll have 0.0135. Lastly, let's look at converting from a decimal to a percent. This is again helpful when we're doing calculations with percents. So we're going to do the reverse this time. We're going to instead move the decimal point 2 places to the right. So still moving it 2 places, but this time to the right. And we're going to include the percent symbol. So let's look at a couple examples. If we take a decimal like 0.18, thinking of that, we're thinking 18 100ths, but our shortcut here, we're going to just take that decimal and it's going to move 2 places to the right, so it becomes 18%. Next, let's take something like 0.06. Again, we're going to move that decimal point 2 places to the right, so that 0.06, which we would read as 6/100ths, is 6%. Let's take one that is a little bit similar. Let's take something pretty close to that, actually. Let's take 0.057. So really close to 0.06, but when we turn that into a percent, we're going to move that decimal point 2 places to the right, and that'll be 5.7%. So again, it's important to track where that decimal is and where it moves to.